Welcome back to Tales of Two Rocks.
Okay, welcome back. Pirates, right. They really capture the imagination, don't they? Freedom, danger, living outside the lines. But what happens when that disregard for the rules becomes, well, more than just a way of life? What happens when it becomes like a driving force, a whole philosophy? That's what we're going to dive into today with the story of Kleb Jones.
A pirate whose journey takes us from, well, you can say a pretty rough start, to leading an entire pirate empire built on chaos.
Yeah, and I mean, we're talking about a chaotic empire here, not your typical organized kind of thing.
Right, exactly.
And we've got this incredible biography we're working with, absolutely packed with details about his life, what made him tick, and the mark he left on history.
It's a wild ride, let me tell you.
So we're going to try and break it all down, chronologically speaking. We'll start with those early years, kind of a wild period for Kleb, and trace his path all the way to becoming, as the legends say, the One-Eyed King.
And it's important, I think, to remember that Kleb's story isn't just about, the classic pirate adventure.
It's deeper than that.
Much deeper. It's about this really interesting, kind of unsettling intersection of personal trauma and, well, extraordinary power.
Okay, so let's rewind a bit. We're talking about Kleb at 20 years old here.
Right.
He's carrying some serious baggage from his past. Not just emotional scars either. This is about the physical stuff, too.
Yeah, we can't forget about that.
He's got this encounter with, how do we put it, a scientist, but not your average lab coat and beakers kind of scientist.
Sebastian was his name, I believe.
Huh?
Quite the character from what the sources say.
Right, Sebastian. And Kleb walks away from this encounter with a new Leshenite eye, a magical artifact, basically. But here's the catch. It comes with a side effect.
A rather persistent and unnerving one.
A voice, right, a voice that only Kleb can hear, and it's always there, haunting him.
Constantly whispering, according to some accounts. This Leshenite eye, you see, is more than just a physical change. It's central to understanding who Kleb becomes.
Because it's imbued with magic.
Exactly. It's like he's been infused with this wild, unpredictable, magical ability.
Wild magic, that's what they call it.
That's how the sources describe it.
Okay.
And it's both terrifying and fascinating to everyone who witnesses it.
So he's like a walking, talking source of chaos before he even steps foot on a ship. Makes you wonder, did he choose the pirate life? Or did it choose him? Was there something about all that lawlessness, all the inherent chaos that just called to him on a deeper level?
Now, that is a question worth considering. Because what we see in the sources suggests that Kleb doesn't just survive that world, he flourishes. And there's this curious detail. As his reputation grows, that haunting voice, it starts to recede, almost like his rise to infamy is starving it out.
Whoa, so there's a connection between him making a name for himself as this force of chaos and this entity, whatever it is, that's tied to the eye.
It's as if, by embodying chaos in the real world, Kleb is taking away the entity's power. It's fascinating.
But, and this is key, even as the voice gets quieter, he still drinks. A lot.
Oh yes, the man was rarely seen without a bottle in hand.
He's consciously keeping that voice at bay, isn't he? Suppressing it.
Absolutely, and that tells us a lot about him even at this early stage. We're talking about a guy who needs to be in control. He rejects the idea of being controlled by anything, even as he dives headfirst into a life of chaos.
It's a contradiction, almost.
Exactly.
So even before we get to the whole Pirate King thing, we're already dealing with a complex character,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. This isn't your typical pirate story.
We're talking about navigating power, the kind you can't control, the kind that comes from within, and the kind that comes from making waves, literally, in the world.
And we're just getting started.
Yeah.
Yeah, by the time we hit Kleb's 30s, well, let's just say he's a different kind of pirate than that scared young man who first set sail.
No kidding, right? We're not talking about some low-level deckhand anymore.
Not even close. He's Captain Kleb Jones now, calling the shots, steering his own ship.
And get this, the ship's name, the Chaos Marauder.
Can you believe that? I mean, talk about announcing your intentions.
It's like a statement, isn't it? He's not hiding from chaos anymore. He's leaning right into it.
Exactly. And this is where things get interesting. Kleb's not just reacting to the chaos around him. He's actively trying to shave it.
And he's not exactly subtle about it. I mean, we see him going after those big pirate alliances.
Right, the ones that have been around forever. He really shakes things up, disrupts those old treaties. It's like he flipped the whole power structure on its head.
And he does it on purpose, doesn't he?
Oh, absolutely. It wasn't just luck or, random acts of piracy. Kleb was playing the long game, playing everyone against each other.
And it works.
Well, it's more complicated than that. It wasn't about creating chaos just for the sake of it. Don't get me wrong, the man loved chaos. But he also understood that power comes from understanding how things work, how to manipulate the systems that are supposed to maintain order.
Okay, so he's not just some wild card. There's a method to his madness.
Exactly. And this is why I find it so fascinating, because Kleb, he represented this total upheaval of the old ways. He embodied this idea that if you're adaptable enough, ruthless enough, you could not only survive chaos, but you could actually thrive in it.
And his crew, they bought into it.
They were fiercely loyal, which, when you think about it, is kind of amazing. This is a guy who is unpredictable, often dangerous.
Not your typical leader.
Not at all. But his crew, they were drawn to that. The sheer audacity of it all, this chance to be part of something bigger, something legendary, even if it meant living on the edge of a knife. It's like they were all gambling on him, betting on chaos to win.
And speaking of gambling, that brings us to, I guess you could say, Kleb's ultimate rival. The complete opposite of him in so many ways.
Ah, yes. Captain Thorn.
This is the guy, right? The established power, the king of the pirate world as it was.
Exactly. While Kleb represented this disruptive force, Thorn was all about keeping things in line, maintaining the status quo, the order he had so carefully built.
And those two, they were on a collision course from the start, weren't they?
It was inevitable. This clash of styles, philosophies, personalities, and it played out over decades. Oh yeah, this wasn't a sudden thing. You see Kleb chipping away at Thorn's authority, little by little, incident after incident, until the tension, it's palpable. You can practically feel it in the sources.
So, how does it all come to a head?
Well, Kleb's about 80 years old when it finally happens.
80? I mean, this isn't some young upstart making a move. We're talking about someone at the top of their game, right? Someone who's been planning this, waiting for the right moment.
And what a showdown it is.
I bet. Give us the details.
It's brutal. A true clash of titans. The sources don't hold back. They describe a battle that had everything at stake. But it's more than just brute force, you see. Kleb, he demonstrates this incredible tactical mind, a real cunning that takes everyone by surprise. Because he's not content with just defeating Thorn, he wants to erase him, wipe out any trace of his influence.
To make a statement.
Absolutely. It's a power move, pure and simple. The old order is dead, gone. And Kleb Jones, well, he's not looking to rebuild. He's got other plans. Far more audacious plans.
It's like he saw opportunity in the chaos, didn't he?
Oh, yeah. Thorn's death, it was like this seismic event. It could have gone either way, really. Some pirate captains might have tried to grab power, try to become the new Thorn.
Reestablish that old order, right?
Exactly. But not Kleb. He understood that real power, lasting power, it often comes from letting go, of trying to control everything.
You're saying he leaned into the chaos, weaponized it.
He was a master at it. Kleb kept those other pirate factions guessing, always on edge, playing them against each other, making sure no one could challenge him.
But it wasn't just about pirates, was it? The whole world felt the impact of his reign.
Oh, absolutely. Kleb Jones, he became this legendary figure, the one-eyed king, they called him.
And not in a good way, I'm guessing.
Well, it depends who you ask. Coastal cities, they were terrified. Trade routes were disrupted, ships plundered, stories spreading like wildfire.
So Kleb's chaos, it had this ripple effect.
It touched everything. It's like the seas themselves were caught in this whirlwind of his making. But here's the thing. Even with all that going on, that internal struggle, the voice tied to the Leshenite eye, it never really went away.
It's always there, lurking in the background.
And the sources, they suggest that at some point, that voice, it offered Kleb even more power. Imagine that.
Ultimate power. And he said no.
He refused. Could you believe it?
Why would he do that? I mean, the guy thrives on chaos. He's built this empire, but he turns down ultimate power.
It's one of the great mysteries surrounding Kleb Jones. Some scholars believe, and this is fascinating, that it reveals something deeper about him.
Like what?
Maybe he realized that true power, the kind that lasts, it comes from mastering yourself, not just the world around you. He already commanded more power than anyone could have imagined.
But the voice, the Leshenite eye, it was still this unknown, something he couldn't control completely.
It's almost tragic when you think about it. Even with all his power, all the chaos he commanded, Kleb Jones, he couldn't escape his past, the choices he made.
Choices that ultimately caught up with him.
Time catches up with us all eventually. He lived a long life, a brutal life, fueled by wild magic. But those later years, the sources paint a different picture. The body starts to break down, the grip on power loosens.
So what's the lesson here? What can we take away from Kleb Jones's story?
That's the question, isn't it? Was he this brilliant strategist who understood that chaos is just another tool, another way to wield power? Or was he, in the end, a slave to it, a slave to the chaos he created in the world and the chaos that raged within him.
It's a tough one.
It really is. Kleb Jones, he reminds us that ambition, legacy, it's all a balancing act, a dangerous game with consequences we might not always foresee.
He left his mark on history, that's for sure. But at what cost?
A question worth considering, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And on that note, we're going to wrap things up. Kleb Jones, pirate, leader, master of chaos. It's a story that stays with you, full of twists and turns, and we've only scratched the surface here. If you want to learn more, really dive into the details, check out the sources we've used today. They're a wild ride.
So until next time, keep those thinking caps on, and remember, two rocks can hide a universe of secrets.